Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video from Marlon Talks NRL SuperCoach. In today's video, I'm going to be going through my final team reveal ahead of the Las Vegas games in, I guess, the first part of round one for 2025. Now, obviously, the team is going to change based on next week's TLT, but I wanted to get this video out just because, obviously, we still do have actual games of footy this weekend. But this is probably going to be the last video I'm going to be able to put out for the next kind of 2.5 weeks, just because of next week I'm getting married. Oh my God. And then honeymoon straight after that. So this will probably be the last team video. So if you do want to see my team, I'm going to be posting it on Patreon. So do go ahead over there as well if you want to see it. Otherwise, this is what the team currently looks like, and I'll talk through my thoughts and everything so that at least you have a good idea as to what my final team will look like. But just wanted to get this out there now, just ahead of the Vegas games. Do follow me on the socials, Instagram, Twitter as well. If you enjoyed the content, do smash the like button and subscribe as well if you want to see more of it after I get married and the honeymoon. But let's get into the video. So starting off with the hooker position, so just a note as well, I've got 40k in the bank left over with this particular squad, which is fine in my opinion. It gives me a little bit of flexibility, but I'm not that wed to having money in the bank. If I find the perfect team and it's got $1 left, that's fine with me. But I'm going double Roosters at hooker, Sandon Smith and Connor Watson. I've covered Sandon Smith in quite a lot of videos. I think I covered him in the hooker video, and I did Connor Watson as well. Sandon Smith, I think, look, Roosters were very poor in their trial, but his goal kicking, Roosters are an attacking team. They should be able to still score some points. I think at the price, it's very hard, I think, for it to go wrong. He is one of the more highly owned players in the game as well, so you'd probably rather just get him. If it fails, you fail with everyone, as opposed to the opposite, which is if you don't start with him and he kills it, you're then behind everyone else. So for me, probably a no-brainer. He's not going to be in my halfback spot just because I do think that there are enough other options at halfback that we'll get into later. Connor Watson at 583k. For a while, I actually had him in my second row forward, but I was running a build which had Mamazelis, and then it got to like Corey Pakes from the Broncos, who may also get the starting position. Minute sharing is what concerned me, and also just running that double cheapy hooker. While it might work, I thought, again, flexibility, I always preach about it at the beginning of the season. Having a bit of money in that hooker spot from the get-go might just help things out. If, let's say, I need to get to Harry Grant and he's absolutely killing it, Connor Watson at least is not that big of a step up compared to going from, say, a Sandon Smith and a Corey Pakes. In his games last year where he played over 59 to 60 minutes, average was 66.5, so he's getting a little bit of extra value there if he does get those 60 minutes, which I think based on the Roosters forward pack and the losses they've had, I think they're going to need him to play those bigger minutes. And his base was 51 in those games. So one thing you'll probably note with the team that I've built, it's pretty safe, like it's template if you want to call it that. But even the players that I've looked at, apart from maybe a few selections, I've tried to go for guys who've generally got decent base stats, decent base power. And I'm leaning more into the fact that points aren't as heavily scored at the beginning of the season. Therefore, if I want to still start off well, try get players who can play through either tough games or can still knock out good points without any attacking stats. That's why Connor Watson, I like the look of him. Sandon Smith, I think for other reasons about the goal kicking, I wanted to keep him. But yeah, having that money in the position, Connor Watson's going to be in there for me. And I also like the duel. For example, if someone from my second row really doesn't work out, let's say I go for a mid-ranger and it just flops, and let's say one of those cheapy hookers does actually really kick off, let's say a Mamazelis or Corey Pakes, I can sell that second row forward to hooker and swap Connor Watson down. So I also like that flexibility that he does give me. So I think Connor Watson will stay there for me for round one. Next up, we're looking at front row. I haven't put any stats about these four. I think this is going to be a very template front row as well of Terrell May and Corey Horsburgh. Go check out my front row forward video if you haven't already. I went into much more detailed stats about these two. I think Terrell May, he showed it in the trial as well. He played 40 minutes straight through, I think, in the first half, and I think he smashed out about 41 points. If he gets 55, 60 minutes, he's at least hitting the 60 average, but I think he's more likely going to be pushing into that mid-60s to 70, I think, just because of the way he plays the game. And Corey Horsburgh, 355k, named to start as well for the Raiders playing this weekend. I think he's going to be an absolute lock. I believe his ownership's around 50%. I think the same for Terrell May. They're very, very popular, but I can see those two being very set and forget front rows for the foreseeable future. So they're not going anywhere, I think, in my team. Royce Hunt and Bentakura, kind of placeholders here. I've just gone for cheapy front rows who I think are going to play, but in actuality, I'm never going to rely on them, I think, in my team. So 249k for Royce Hunt, Bentakura might just get some minutes, maybe not from the get-go, but around the origin period when there's no Pat Carrigan, no Payne Haas. I expect him to eventually get into that team and play some minutes and be of some use. So even if he doesn't start from the beginning, I might just sit with him there anyway, in excuse me, in the knowledge that he is more likely going to get a spot eventually when it comes to around the origin team. So front row hooker, I think I'm pretty set on. Don't see myself doing many changes there. Now, moving into the second row, this position has been a little bit more difficult for me, but I've eventually landed on the set of players. So I've got Jermaine Hopgood as my gun 2RF. I know I was a bit more keen on Olakuatu, but I don't know, this is gut feel. Hopgood's in there at the moment. Alex Seyfarth and Nafal White. And then on the bench, we've got Tino, Kobe Hetherington, and Val Melga from the Warriors. So who's been named on the bench this week. Now, there is some job security potential concerns with Val Melga. Laban was there, but he's not in the squad this week. I just think he looked good in trials, and he's got that tackle busting ability. He's 232k as well, he's bottom dollar. Again, same thing that I say with Connor Watson. If he flops, but Corey Pakes becomes a thing, I will just swap Connor Watson down to second row forward and go cheapy hooker at that point in time. But while right now I don't know for sure, this is the setup that I've wanted. So I'm almost looking at him as a bit of a placeholder. Hopgood. So I'll quickly just touch on Hopgood. So last season, playing over 60 minutes, his average went up to about 70. He's priced at about a 67. So he's not offering like crazy value, but I just think, I don't know, I've got a good feeling with the Eels. And I think I've got a good feeling with Hopgood. His injury affected last year. You might want to get back to that level we saw in the year prior in 2023 where he averaged 73. Eels draws not too bad as well, so there's potential for some attacking stats in there as well. But again, he's a solid worker, good base. He's not as reliant on the attacking stats. So I think, and he's got a very SuperCoach friendly game with the offloads. So very keen, I think, on having Hopgood. The minutes might not be where I want at the beginning, but I think I'm going to be, as much as possible, patient with him in the hope that his minutes do start building up, because I think we saw how good he was in 2023. I think 657k for him is a good price. So happy to go with him. Alex Seyfarth, I think you're going to see him become more and more popular just as we get closer and closer to lockouts. He's priced at about 44, but when he played over 50 minutes last year, his average went up to 56.6. Pretty certain if you look at his 80-minute edge games, his average went up to like in the mid to high 60s. Now, I don't think he's going to be hitting that, but it looks like that role of an 80-minute edge back row is going to be locked in with the Tigers. And so I like him at the price at 435k. I actually did have Kelma Tuolangi as well, but I swapped him out for Nafal White. Reason was because I was getting more and more interested in Hopgood. My thoughts were, do I really want two of the Eels back rowers? And Tuolangi's performance in the most recent trial was not good, to say the least. Looked very disinterested. Now, I know we shouldn't always rely on trials, but to be perfectly honest, my gut was telling me is the stats do look good for Tuolangi when he played over kind of, I think, 70-minute games last year for the Eels. He had a really good work rate, and he probably is playing outside of Mitch Moses, but we've been there in the past with Tuolangi, and he's kind of burnt us. So at the moment, I'm sitting in the position of, look, he might be a good thing, but that last trial didn't fill me with confidence, and I already had a little bit of an inkling of, or a bit of doubt that, am I sold on him? So that's why I've, in the end, not decided to go with him. Seyfarth, I'm pretty confident on. Hopgood, look, whether or not it's Hopgood in the end, it will be someone around that price. It's probably either going to be Hopgood, Olakuatu, or maybe like a Jacob Preston, but I do want someone around that 650 to kind of low 600k. I think there's some good value there. And again, thinking of flexibility, I'm avoiding any of those massive 700k price 2RFs, but if one of them kills it and we need to jump on them, it's much easier to do so having a 650k guy there already compared to going, say, all mid-ranger. Noah Papali'i as well. He's been named on the bench for the Panthers, so I'm not considering him. Tino, I've been so hot on in the preseason, looked really good in the trial as well, so absolutely no concerns, I think, going with him. My go forward 2RF is probably going to be Hopgood, Tino, and Seyfarth. Those would be my starting three. Nafal White, look, there's no Spencer Leniu for the first 2 rounds with suspension. I know that doesn't mean it's so much because prices don't change until round 3. And the most meaningful price changes happen after your round 3 score. But in his games last year when he played over 40 minutes, he had an average of 53. So I think, look, 367k, he's dual. There's a couple of things going for him there. I think the Roosters forwards are lacking a little bit this year. So again, similar with Connor Watson, I think there's going to be a need for him to play some decent minutes. And so I think I like the dual. Price is a little bit in the kind of that awkward mid-range territory. I'm not looking at him as a massive cash cow. But if you can get up to like kind of 450 to 500k, that'd be awesome. we can turn him for a profit. But what I also just like is I feel like a bit more comfortable just having him as a plug and play if I ever need to. That's why I feel comfortable putting him in there when Tino's on the bye this week. But Tino will come in once round one is over, and Nafal White can then just go on the bench. So I don't even need to rely on his points, I guess, so much. The final kind of mid-ranger guy there is Kobe Hetherington. Probably a bit of a plotter, but if I'm being honest, no offense, Kobe, if you're ever watching this video, but should be starting at lock for the Broncos. He's priced at 35 and he played over 40-minute games 9 times in 2024 for an average of 43. So you're looking at almost 9 to 10 points of value. So again, don't think he's going to be one of those guys who I expect to be like an amazing, super profitable cash cow, but someone who can plot along, fill a void if I need him to, and is in a pretty good Broncos team with a good draw. And so hopefully he's getting decent minutes. And again, he can be a steady Eddie pick that I have. And if any time Payne, Haas, or Pat Carrigan are out through Origin, if I've still got Kobe Hetherington at that point in time, should hopefully be playing some decent minutes. So I think overall, hooker and front row, pretty set on. Now, of course, if a cheapie comes out of nowhere from next week's TLT, that's bottom dollar or cheaper than Benjamin Takura, I'll happily take them. I might even take it in Royce Hunt's place. But that's kind of the structure that I'm going for. But Sanders Smith, Connor Watson, Terrell May, Corey Horsburgh, I don't really see myself changing. Don't see myself changing Tino, Seyfarth. The other spots in 2RF could change, but I'm leaning more towards having Hopgood at this point in time. Now moving on to the halves. So this was a big point in my head of thinking, do I go Cleary and Hines, which is what I was on that a lot of the preseason. But I've ended up going to Tom Duffy. So Cleary versus Hines, I think at the beginning of the preseason I was more keen on Hines, but I just thought with Penrith, Cleary's going to need the ball more without Jerome Luai. Round 4 onwards, it's hard to not have Cleary, I think, when, to be fair, you could say the same thing about Nico Hines, because now since we did, since those videos earlier in the preseason, the Rabbitohs look much worse now, because there's no Latrell and no Cam Murray for the entire season. So after the first 2-3 rounds for Penrith, Rabbitohs, Cowboys, Dolphins, Roosters, Manly, Broncos, Cowboys, I think I'm definitely going to want Cleary. With Nico Hines, look, his draw is probably a little bit better at the beginning because after Penrith, you've got Cowboys, Rabbitohs, Bulldogs, Canberra, Manly, Knights, Tigers, Parramatta, Manly. It's a pretty good draw actually after round 2, but I just find it hard to resist what we think is going to be a starting goal-kicking bottom dollar cheapie at halfback. And my thought process was always, if I went Cleary and Hines, if Tom Duffy does turn out to be the cheapie that we think he is, and he's going to be making a bunch of cash and he looks set for the role, you can always go Hines down to Tom Duffy. But then I was like, the time that you'd probably want to be doing that is round 3, round 4. And I don't think you'd want to be selling Nico Hines in round 3 when he's got the Rabbitohs, nor when his draw is about to open up. Same with Cleary. Are you really going to sell Cleary in round 3 when, yes, he's got Melbourne, but then it's the Rabbitohs, Cowboys? So I almost just thought about it like, as in, I think just stick with the 2 that you think are going to be more likely the ones that you're going to end up just keeping kind of longer term, rather than sticking with Hines and then maybe having to trade down to Tom Duffy just to save yourself that trade from the beginning. That's how I've landed on Tom Duffy. And with Cleary, I just think he's going to get more touches of the ball. I think he will probably start a little bit slower than Hines if I had to guess, but just long term, as we get until Origin, I think Cleary is just who I want, and there's not that much of a massive price difference between the two. It's about 75, 76k. So I'm happy to lock in Cleary and Duffy, I think, for this moment in time. On 5'8", look, Luke Metcalf, he's one of the more highly owned players. Don't think I really need to speak too much about him. He's actually got the dual status added to him now as well as of yesterday, so he's halfback and 5'8". Just another thing to sweeten the deal with him. Goal kicking, looks to be steering the ship around for the Warriors. Draw is okay, but look, he's at a decent price. I think you can be very comfortable, I think, locking in Metcalf. Now, with the backup 5'8", like there was a bit of a surprise selection with Chanel Harris-Tavita, but I didn't want to go double halves from the same team, and I just think the job security with Harris-Tavita is a little bit suspect just because you do have Tamara Martin, and he killed it last year for them. So maybe it's a potential Vegas ploy. I don't know, maybe they're prioritizing defense or something else. Something could be keeping Tamara Martin out. So I've opted to not go for Harris-Tavita, and I do want to spend up a little bit more at 5'8". So I've gone Cam Munster. So if you watched my 5'8 video from about a week ago, I was pretty keen on Munster. It's probably going to be him or Dill Brown for me. Look, Matt Burton could be an option, but I don't know why. I just gut feel I never feel that attracted to Burton. What I think I like about Munster, again, he's got good base. So generally in these tougher games, he generally always still scores well. He normally hovers around the 65 to 75. Doesn't stray too far from that, but we know he's got those big games in him. The early buy is frustrating in round 2, but look, I guess you set up your team in a way where the way I've done it now with Tom Duffy and spoiler, I've got Isaiah Iongi as well. I think the overall squad depth is pretty good. I think I can cover for Munster not being there for a week. My other thing was I didn't have any players from Melbourne, and I know you shouldn't be going for cover picks, but I think Munster in his own right is a good pick. 609k is definitely offering value because his games over 60 minutes last year, he was getting back up to that 68, 69 average that he has historically met. And so I just look at it as there's almost 6, 7 points of value already on Munster. Parramatta in round 1 is good. Penrith round 3 is not the best, but he's a big game player. His stats actually show he performs better in easier games. Round 4, the draw really opens up for Melbourne. And I thought not having any of their players just didn't quite feel right. So that's why I've landed on Munster. Could go Dill Brown, but I've got Hopgood as well in there. I didn't want to go too hard on the Eels. I wanted to get someone from the Storm, and I thought Munster presented a good opportunity there. So that's currently the makeup. I think Cleary Duffy is going to be pretty locked in for me. Metcalf definitely locked in. Munster, if I've got the money, I'm not that far off going Munster to Dill Brown just now. I can do that. That would be, I think, 4 years in a row then of me starting with Dill Brown. So I can't guarantee that Munster is going to be there round 1 because if you've watched this channel for long enough, you know I've got a certain affinity for Dill Brown. I've started with him the last 3 seasons. We might just make it 4 years in a row just to keep the trend going. But otherwise, pretty happy with how the halves are looking at the moment. Now, centre wing, have spent a little bit more money here just because I thought there was a lot of good options just around that 500k range. So starting off, I've got Ruben Garrick. I think he's probably the most popular gun centre wing at the moment. 680k. He's got a really good draw to start off. 5 home games in the first 7. Looking at last year, his non-injured average was 79.2. So those are the games where he didn't suffer any injuries. And that also increases to 79.7 when he's playing at home. And he's priced at 70. So you're looking at 10 points of value, good draw, the goal kicker. I think Garrick is a set and forget for me. Now I've gone, again, the whole theme of having players who I think are more safe, good base stats. I've gone with 3 guys who I think have generally got pretty good base power, so they're not going to disappoint me as much on a week-to-week basis, I guess. I've got Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, Marzu, and Skelton. So, and apologies in advance, I won't be able to do a full comprehensive centre wing video, it's just been so hectic. But so some quick stats on these guys though. So Tuivasa-Sheck, he only had 2 games on the wing in 2024. He scored 85 and 70 with 42 and 39 in base. He's playing on the wing now for the Warriors. To be honest, there's a little bit of me, which is, it's the Vegas games. You want to have players in that very first game. So I'm like, yeah, let me get Roger. And I'll be extra happy if he goes and scores a try early on. So with Tuivasa-Sheck, good base stats on the wing. I really like that. And 553k, I think is a pretty good price. I think he's probably got 4 to 5 points of value there. Draws mixed, but I like the base stats with him. So I think he's pretty safe. So I'm thinking I'm going to go stick with him. With Marzu, the Knights do have a really, really good draw in the opening rounds. They do have a bye fairly early on. I believe it's in round 4. So spoiler alert, my fullbacks are pretty template. I didn't want to load up on too many Knight plays. So that's why I didn't also get Dylan Lucas, who I do fancy. But I thought I'll take the 100k saving and I'll go Marzu. With Bradman Best last year, his average was 59.5, a 58.3 average when playing at home, and he's priced on 52. In the opening weeks, they do have a few away games, but the away games are not that bad. Like we're talking about the West Tigers, and I believe they've got the Titans in an away game. So I'm not as concerned about those away stat averages versus home, because the away games are pretty good. I just hope that we can get back to the Marzu we saw from the year prior to last, where he was like a 78 averaging guy. 513k, I think it's a bit of a risk because he was a bit disappointing last year, but we're hoping for a bounce back here. And with Skelton, look, I don't expect the Tigers to be going guns blazing from the beginning and scoring all these points, but there is some buzz and excitement about them. And what I like about Skelton though, really good underlying base power stats. So he only had 6 games in the last 2 years where he's played over 60 minutes. There was 1 game where he played 64 minutes, the rest were all 80-minute games. But his average in those games was 62.7, and it was 63 if you look specifically at 2024. So he's priced fairly, but I think there's a few points of value there in him as well. And Tigers also do have a pretty good draw to open the season, but he's just got good base power stats about him as well. So again, looking at him as pretty safe. So Garrick's my high upside centre wing, and the rest are all pretty safe. And then on the bench, I think there's a pretty stock standard centre wing cheapies. Robert Toya, Jackson Purdue, who both look like they should hopefully be starting round 1. And then I've got Finau from the Dragons. bit more of a risk with him because Tui Pelotu could maybe get that left wing spot. But again, I'm looking at him as a placeholder. I haven't gone to Male from the Raiders, who has been named to start this week. But that is also because Albert Hopewati, I think, is going to be the one to take that spot back when he's back in the team. He's just missing this particular game again, in Vegas because he's got the birth of his child coming up. So Tamale, I think, is a bit of a risk. And you've also got a couple of other options. There's Shibasaki, who could play the first 4 to 6 weeks for the Broncos because Tony Staggs is out. Or you've got Finau. So that position is kind of not yet locked. I could maybe go Jesse McLean, but he's not been named yet at the moment. Maybe he gets his way into the game day squad for the Panthers. But at the moment, that's just a bit of a placeholder. Could be Finau. It could stay as Finau. It could be Shibasaki, which does also free up another kind of 40k, which I could use elsewhere. That could be money to make me go from Munster Brown if I want to do that. Or it could make me even go like Hopgood up to like an Eli Katoa if I really felt like that too. But again, just a bit of a placeholder at the moment. But I think I'm going to go for 3 cheapies on the bench in the centres. And then high upside guy in Garrick. Don't think he's going anywhere. And then kind of 3 of these 500k guys. I could switch it around a little bit if I wanted to get, say, Dylan Lucas instead of Marzu. What I could do is Finau down 40k and get someone like a Shibasaki. And then maybe I find some money from somewhere else. Maybe instead of kind of Kobe Hetherington, if I go for another 232k guy, if one emerges, that would give me the money to go Marzu to Dylan Lucas. And I don't mind the idea of having a 2RF CT dub duel at the beginning because I do think it becomes quite useful. I could even end up just going like a Jack Bird, Dylan Lucas combo potentially as well, just to have those 2 players. But basically what I'm saying is I want someone from the Knights, either Dylan Lucas or Marzu. Marzu fits the squad structure better. And then 3 cheapy centers on the bench, and Skelton just looks like an absolute gun. So happy enough with him. Finally, on fullback, probably the most template part of team's pretty template in general, but this is probably going to be the most common fullback setup you'll see in preseason. So yeah, call me boring, but I just want to pick the players who I think will score the most points. Tommy Turbo, absolutely locked. Probably going to be my captain in round 1. I believe he's playing the Cowboys at home in round 1. So I think he'll be my captain. Ponga is my flex, so you can vice captain him. So I think he'll be my vice. And then I've got Iongi on the bench there. Looked good in the trial as well. I put some stats on him in my fullback video about the potential money he could make. We're looking at maybe like 250k of money that he can make if he just goes. I gave him some pretty conservative scores in the opening weeks, and I think he'll still make 200 250k. You could go 3 gun fullbacks, but I think it did start to sacrifice quite a bit. I found second row a little bit difficult to fill with mid-ranges. CT double, though, I found there was plenty. So I think overall I'm really happy with the squad structure, and I think having Iongi and Tom Duffy does enable this. I think this year we're actually pretty blessed with cheapies. I think we've got quite a good crop of them. So that's enabled me to get guns like Cleary, Turbo, Ponga, Garrick, Hopgood. I've also got Tyrell May, who's pretty expensive, Tino. I think there's a few good gun players in there, mixed in with still some good value picks, like Tuivasa-Sheck, Skelton, Marzu. They're not super expensive guys. So I really like what my squad looks like, being able to have Iongi and Tom Duffy. So can't see that changing at all, to be honest. These 3 fullbacks, to be honest, I think I've decided I'm going on the Iongi method, not the 3 gun fullbacks. Don't see this changing at all. Now, that is my final team reveal ahead of the preseason. As I said at the beginning, probably going to be the last video for a few weeks now, so just please do bear with me. But we'll be posting my team as much as I possibly can up on Patreon, so do go check it out over there. Hopefully you all enjoyed the video. Enjoy the Las Vegas footy this week, and see you all in the next one. Cheers.